What are your thoughts on the prevalent thing that you notice in failed relationships today?
I would say the number one cause or the number one denominator in most failed relationships is they are using another person to meet what their unmet needs were in their childhood. And what I mean by this is when relationships break down, it's usually because maybe somebody grew up without financial stability. So they use a partner who has financial stability, take, and they're not there for valid reasons. Or let's say when a boy maybe grew up a little bit lonely or didn't have access to very many beautiful women and just want to be with her because she's beautiful, not if she's compatible or not. So when relationships usually break down is when they haven't really realized what has been the driving force for selecting that partner. And they're using a person to kind of heal themselves when that's not really what we need. What we need to do is kind of reflect on that ourselves and make sure we're not picking a partner based on our ego and our broken needs and actually basing it on character and connection.
With breakups, what would be the best thing to do? You know, you have one person that may be going on Tinder or using bodies to kind of cope, whereas the other person might focus on themselves and hunker down and focus on work or whatever it might be. What is the best way to go around that?
I think the best way to heal from a breakup is take complete and utter accountability. Where people go wrong is they start Googling how their ex was a narcissist or how they were such a victim, and then they over-identify as a victim. And when you over-identify as a victim, you can't actually select better in the future. You'll still see yourself as somebody who was just used and abused, and you label yourself as that, and then therefore you can't actually heal. The better thing to do is think, this was entirely my fault, even if it wasn't. Yeah, sometimes we have terrible partners. Even if it wasn't, we change it to, it was entirely my fault because I probably accepted unacceptable behavior, or I probably ignored some red flags, or I probably knew I couldn't handle this part of that personality and I still went forward. So you make it entirely your fault, and then you think, okay, how do I prevent this from happening in the future? Well, I'm going to prevent it by making sure I do X, Y, and Z. And then that way you'll be a little bit more confident going into dating again in the future. Where people go wrong is they don't reflect on that. They focus entirely on their ex-partner, and then they use other people or they use drugs or alcohol or something as a coping mechanism. And then they still feel like they've lost control of their life. They still feel like a victim and they still feel broken. Best thing to do is take complete ownership. It's okay to get it wrong sometimes, but how do we learn from this and how do we improve?
There's obviously different flags. There's red ones, there's orange ones, yellow ones, whatever. How do you navigate through that when you're starting to date someone where you see red flags that could potentially become, relationship ending, versus the ones that aren't that much of a big deal?
The main thing is everybody has flaws. That's not a problem. You just need to distinguish between red flags and deal breakers. A red flag might be she's a bit late sometimes. Like whenever you pick her up, she takes long to get ready. She's late. At the end of the day, I wouldn't call that a huge deal breaker because most women have a struggle with that. Or a red flag in a man might be that he forget to pick up after himself. Yeah, it's annoying, but it's probably not a deal breaker because it's quite common and it's copable. How you know what to stay away from is when something is a deal breaker, and only you know what your deal breakers are. For some people, a deal breaker is a partner that doesn't make them feel safe. It's about how they make them feel. They don't say nice things. They don't give them enough affection. They don't give them enough sexual contact. For them, that's a deal breaker. If you know this person has that habit, going forward, that deal breaker is still going to come up. So there's no point going forward because the relationship is going to end at some point anyway. Another person, the deal breaker might be infidelity. If they see any infidelity in the future, they're going to end the relationship. But people who are unfaithful usually show you signs that they have that capability. They usually done it in the past, or they show you that they're still talking to an ex or previous people in the beginning stages of a relationship. So they give you the signals. So you just have to decide that, do they have your deal breakers or not? You should only have 2 or 3 deal breakers. Do they have their deal breakers? And if they have one of your deal breakers, you can still be with them. I'm not saying you don't have to be with them, but you have to manage your expectations. Don't expect that deal breaker to disappear. It's going to come up forever, potentially. You just have to ask yourself, can I accept this deal breaker forever? And if you can't, let them go early on rather than being mad at them for being the exact person they showed you that they were in the beginning. The main thing is to like the person you are. When you like the person you are, you see yourself as a gift to other people. And therefore you're like, you don't get to access me whenever you want. You don't get to talk to me like that. You don't get to disrespect me and I'm still good to you. You have to like the person you are. And how you like the person you are is you fulfill your potential and you make really good, healthy decisions. How you dislike dislike the person you are is when you are not fulfilling your potential. You're making really bad decisions in general in life, very chaotic decisions. And in private, you're somebody you don't respect. Publicly, you might be great, but privately, when you go home and you're by yourself, you do things that you don't respect. You might be paying for OnlyFans subs, or you might be watching pornography, or you might be gambling all night, or you might be drinking too much. You're doing things that makes you not like yourself. So I think the main thing is you have to really stop and ask yourself, do I like myself? Now, if you don't, get into shape, make good decisions, try and get better with your money. Do think, I'm not saying be rich, but just don't be frivolous. Don't get yourself in debt every month or whatever it is. It makes us hate ourselves. When we cause ourselves problems, we hate ourselves. Just think if somebody stole your wallet, you'd hate them. Now, if you yourself are causing yourself debt by spending too much, you're going to hate you. So when you're snatching self-respect from yourself, you're going to not like yourself. So I think the best way to become really controlled and really value yourself, where you place your energy, is to like the person you are.
You said a man who can't walk away from a woman that he doesn't want or respect ends up losing his self-worth and his masculinity in his own mind. Why some men even end up in those situations?
When you can't walk away from somebody that is disrespectful, someone who's not good to you and not good for you, but you don't have a willingness to walk away. For a man, normally when somebody annoys you, when somebody disrespects you, whatever it is, 1 or 2 fights or whatever it is, then you can get physical and you get it out of your system and never speak to that person again. With a woman, you can't touch her. So you have all this rage, all this anger and rage that you can't actually give to her because that's inappropriate. So you give it to yourself. You start to hate yourself. When she's doing things that you know are so wrong, but you don't have a willingness to walk away, you might stay with her, but at the expense of your own self-respect. And you will literally start to hate yourself. You will look at yourself like you're a weaker person, and she can smell that off you. So the disrespect gets worse. The meanness gets worse. So when she learns you don't have that willingness to walk away, instead of appreciating you for staying with her through her battles, she now thinks, okay, he'll never go, but we're actually looking for the line. So she'll push you more and push you more and push you more, waiting to see where the line, the threshold is. If she can't find it, she'll just leave you. When they find that line, usually by that time, if they've stepped on him too many times to get there, she doesn't even care now. But they're waiting for that line, because when we realize you don't have the willingness to walk away, we're no longer as attached and attracted anyway. So we're just waiting for you to realize the line. And if you don't realize, we'll just find someone who does realize where the line is, and they usually move on.
What exactly do women want in a man?
We all want different things, as in how tall he has to be, how short he has to be, what he does for a living. Everybody might want different things. But in terms of psychological components that we want from our man, every woman wants from her man. The first thing we want is a man that we cannot manipulate. That's first and foremost. And what I mean by this is, if he's naive and if he believes everything we tell him, and if he doesn't double check and he doesn't triple check, and he's just super, super naive, women hate that. Even if she has every intention to manipulate you, even if she's planning to cheat on you, she still wants to know that you can wake up to this and you're not going to let her get away with this. You're not going to be so stupid and naive. And the reason why we hate naivety is that if you can't spot the threats in us, you can't tell her might be a threat to you. We think that you can't spot the threats in other people. Maybe another woman can manipulate you, or maybe that you trust the wrong people, or maybe when we go out, you can't protect me because you can't even spot the threats in the environment. So if you can't spot the threats in me, and when I'm lying to you and I'm manipulating you, you're going to be, how can I let you lead? And that's the number one thing. They absolutely, naivety, stupidity, all of that stuff, when they just allow you to manipulate, that puts every woman off universally. And she might not realize this. She might think, no, I don't mind a naive guy, or I think it's toxic when they ask too many questions. No. They need it, because that is a form of protection. If a naive parent, think about a naive parent. If I had a baby and I was like, oh, they can play in the park by themselves, they'll be totally fine. The baby needs you to come with them. They need you to watch everything. They need you to be careful, like that person's too close, that kid is being dangerous, because that's how they feel safe. Same thing happens to women. If you can spot the threats, okay, you're texting your boss a bit too much after work, or you came home a bit too late that time, tell me the truth. But when he's just like, okay, no worries, okay, yeah, I can tell, yeah, your boss sounds great. She was even thinking, what's wrong with this? How does he believe all this? So I think that's the first trait that she wants to say, somebody who can spot threats in their environment, and how to avoid being toxic with them and not just be somebody who's totally jealous and insecure and just spot all the threats, is that you also offer lots of love and care at the same time. You're not just being controlling and worried about threats, but you're also being worried about, did you get home okay? Do you want me to pick you up? Or what time do you land? I will come and get you from the airport. They want to show that you're protected in general. If you're just being protected when it comes to another man, but then you don't care whether I'm struggling, if I'm not struggling, if I'm upset, I'm sad, you don't care about all those things, then we think you're a toxic. But when you are overall a protector, we love that. Yeah, so it's an extension of your natural protective instinct. I think that's the first thing. And the second thing I would say is your emotional regulation. We as women are very chaotic. We can be sad, happy, depending on our period, where emotions are all over the place. But when we have a man who can control his emotions, and what we mean by emotions, you still have them. You still have them all the time, but they're not disproportionate to the situation. So you'll get angry when something's angry, but you don't go wild with anger. You'll get sad when something is sad, but you're not hysterical and no one can console you. But you can experience emotions, but you regulate them back to normal after a short period of time. So we're looking for emotional regulation as well. We like that. And the other thing is just consideration. I would say that consideration is an important one. Just knowing that you understand and try and understand her feelings and take into account what she's saying to you, as long as it's reasonable and as long as it's productive for the relationship, not just her, that we like. So manipulation is when she's asking for things that only benefit her, but not the relationship. But compromise and consideration is when she's asking for things that benefit both of you and the relationship overall. That you should definitely listen to.